Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteus and we will be just diving into a discussion on the updates on the Russia-Ukraine war. In a major development, Russia and Ukraine have exchanged hundreds of prisoners of war in a deal brokered by the UAE. 150 Ukrainian soldiers were swapped for an equal number of Russian troops. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed the return of the 189 Ukrainians, including key defenders from Mariupol and Snake Island. The emotional exchange marks the 59th swap since Russia's full-scale invasion. Meanwhile, US President Biden announced nearly $2.5 billion in military aid to Ukraine, alongside an additional $3.4 billion in economic support from the US Treasury to help Ukraine's government and infrastructure. Today, we are joined by Madhav Nalaput, who is the editorial director of the THG. We are also joined by Mahesh Shahdev, former ambassador, and Major General A.K. Sawach, a defense expert. Major General A.K. Sawach, I wanted to come to you first, actually, and I wanted to talk about this aid that America, President Joe Biden, has awarded to Ukraine in the final weeks of his presidency. I wanted to know, what can $2.5 billion get you in military aid? How can that help Ukraine defend itself?
Continuously getting aid both from NATO as well as from the US. And as far as Joe Biden is concerned, he has made his mind that he will keep on giving them aid till 20th January before he hand over to Donald Trump. Now, till now, Ukraine is getting a support. He's getting weapons, he's getting ammunition. He is also got, number of weapons which can now strike deep inside Russia. So till now, the situation seemingly looks to be quite okay. It is about $6 billion out of them, $2.5 billion they will able to spend money on buying weapons and ammunition, which is quite a bit. But what is happening is, the worry is not this, what will happen thereafter. That is the biggest worry. Will Donald Trump also keep on supporting Ukraine the way Joe Biden administration was doing? That's a big question mark. As the things unfold, the time and again, the hint has been given by Donald Trump that US is unlikely to spend so much money on Ukraine. First of all, it will force the other NATO country to take the share. The second thing is, he wants this war to now end. And possibly that is what everyone is expecting, that basically Russia-Ukraine war may come to an end once Donald Trump take over. And why, the chances are there, because the situation on border is that both are now trying to improve their position. It is escalate before de-escalate. It means there is an escalation taking place, knowing fully well the chances of a ceasefire are there after 20th January. So improve your position in a manner that once you sit on a negotiating table, you have got something to take and something to give. And that is a very important point for Ukraine, which is not happening. Of late, what is happening is that Russia is slowly and steadily progressing in East Ukraine. And so Russia has already taken almost 20% of the land of Ukraine, including Kyiv, which it had taken in 2014. Only thing what Russia has lost is Kursk. No doubt about it. The Ukraine has managed to take Kursk, about 1200 square kilometer, and is still holding almost 70% of Kursk area, in spite of North Koreans being utilized by Russian. So what is happening now is, the situation will escalate. Till 20 January, you will find the attack on both the sides will be more. Russia will try to improve its position, and as far as Ukraine is concerned, it has two aims. One is not to lose in too much land in East Ukraine and hold on to the Kursk, which it so far has kept it, and also strike inside the territory of Russia and make Russia also vulnerable. Because the moment the permission is being given that the weapons of NATO and US can be utilized deep inside Russian territory, that has made a difference. Because the public opinion will go against Putin, that they are also becoming casualties. So far, the war was only taking place in Ukraine. Once the war has gone inside Russia, I think this will also make a tremendous impact, and this may hasten up to have a ceasefire in time to come.
Thank you, Major General. I wanted to bring in Madhav Nalapat on the next question. Obviously, Biden has purposely done this before Trump comes into office. We've heard Trump vocalize support for not giving any more aid to Ukraine. That's also come from a lot of important European leaders as well, including Giorgia Meloni and Viktor Orban. What can we expect for the result of this to be when Trump comes into office on January the 20th?
Well, Trump is going to do what frankly should have been done in 2022 itself, which is end the war. There was an opportunity to end the war in 2022 April, and Putin was ready, but the Ukrainians were not, because the Europeans and the Americans, led of course by President Biden, were urging them to fight on, that they would give them assistance. The fact of the matter is, every month after that, Ukraine has suffered hot casualties, huge damage in its structure and infrastructure, and frankly in the morale of its people. Today, morale is at rock bottom. Zelensky's popularity is at rock bottom, and the Ukrainian people want peace. Frankly, so do the Russians, and so does the rest of the world, because all of us have been gravely impacted by this unwinnable war, and all of us have suffered as a consequence of logistical difficulties, the price rise, and other issues caused by this particular war. So the sooner it ends, the better. But I'd like to say, quite frankly, that Zelensky, I think, is committed to this war as much as Biden was, or frankly, Johnson was, or Sunak was, and Scholz was, until quite recently, if I may add, and Macron still seems to be. But the reality is it's an unwinnable war, and I wish he had realized it before creating a situation in which he refused Putin's peace offer of April 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mahesh, I wanted to talk to you about the other big development. Obviously, it was nearly 200 people were swapped from each side from Russia to Ukraine. What is the significance behind this? Does Russia rely a bit too much on prisoner swaps as well?
I think this is neither the first nor the last exchange of prisoners. The important aspect of this is that UAE continues to broker this prisoner exchange, but getting in the good books of both sides. And I think to some extent this allows UAE to play a more robust role with the Biden administration as well, because while to Russia getting the prisoners of war back may not matter as much in a controlled society, it matters more in the Ukrainian President Zelensky, who, as Professor Nalpat mentioned and others have mentioned, has a low morale to take care of, and this swap allows him to show that he hasn't forgotten his prisoners of war, and he is doing all that can be done. I think one should also mention here that NATO's expansion is the basic issue. NATO's expansion to include Ukraine is something that is Russia has always been against, and that is where the red lines have been crossed. Now, any ceasefire negotiation in Trump's time or elsewhere would have to take care of that aspect of Russians' strong objection, and I think there are other sort of hints about Russia's position softening, a couple of weeks ago when Russian President Vladimir Putin had his phone in. He has it every year in December. He allowed himself to say that Russia is willing to compromise for the sake of peace with Ukraine, but Ukraine has to show also willingness to compromise. And then he threw in some other curveballs, such as Zelensky has run out of his term and a new president needs to be elected with whom negotiations can be held. Now, there are also straws in the wind that informal soundings about Mr. Trump's ceasefire and peace deal have been rejected by Vladimir Putin. So we have a lot of water to go down Volga before we see end of the war, and this will get worse before it gets better.
Thank you very much. I wanted to talk to you, Major General A.K. Sawatch. I want to know what Ukraine can do to respond to Russia's territorial goals in Donetsk. Now, we said earlier that Ukraine has only attained land in Russia in the Kursk region. Is this war unwillable for Ukraine at this point?
No doubt. As far as Ukraine is concerned, it is not in a position to take back whatever it has lost. It has lost about 20% of its land, both in Donbass, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and it has lost in 2014 Crimea. So the chances of its retaking is out of question. It can further lose it. What's happening is, as the war is prolonging, you find that Russia is slowly but surely progressing in East Ukraine and covering almost 10 to 15 kilometers every day. So therefore, in case if this war prolongs, the chances of Ukraine losing more area are very high. So the sooner it flees, the better for Ukraine. And one thing is which is favorable to him is if we hold on Kursk. But in case if the war carries on and Russia put a lot of force in Kursk, because it's already put 12,000 North Korean and managed to take Kursk also back, then there will be no leeway left as far as Zelensky is concerned. So I think a good sense should prevail now. The war should end because all throughout the world, food, fuel, fertilizer have become costly. And due to this war, you know, the economy of the world has come down almost 2%. So I suppose, though Donald Trump is trying to show that he's not going to accept those terms and conditions, especially the timeline given for Zelensky or Ukraine to join NATO. I suppose this is give and take. He will take up a particular position, knowing fully well once Donald Trump comes, then there will be a serious negotiation which will take place. It can't be one way only. It has to be give and take. I suppose some sort of solution will emerge because the reason is simple. The US is not going to support Ukraine as much as what Joe Biden administration was giving. And Ukraine has no capacity to fight alone. So therefore the question comes that there will be going to be some negotiation, but it can't be totally on the terms given by Putin. It will be also take consideration the future of Ukraine, how it will rebuild, whether it can come in European Union, if not in NATO. All these points will be discussed, and what will be the ceasefire? Will there be a buffer zone? Who will man the buffer zone? Whether it is a NATO or whether UK or someone else. So all this question will be discussed, but it seems the chances of a negotiation and ceasefire are very likely after Donald Trump takes over. May not be immediately, but in time to come, because this war is now a frozen war where you find that the situation is almost stable, except Russia is winning a little bit, you know, in the eastern Ukraine. It should end because this is bringing agony to the whole world.
Thank you very much. Madhav Nalapat, I wanted to ask you, is this kind of, obviously, the land that Ukraine has said to have already lost, they've said that that has been now lost to Russia. Is this not seen as appeasing Putin in the slightest?
Look, from 2014, that land, much of it was lost to Russia. Let's be honest. There was a coup called the Maidan coup, and the elected president of Ukraine was toppled in favor of a Ukrainian, what they call a nationalist. Basically, they're Russophobic Ukrainians. And frankly, the history shows that for much of the time that there was the Soviet Communist Party, much of the time it was Ukrainians who were in command as General Secretary of the CPSU. So they had an innate sense of superiority over the Russians. And frankly, in 2014, they outlawed the Russian language. They expelled Russians from the majority Ukrainian-speaking areas of Ukraine. And essentially, as a consequence, Putin reacted, as he had done in Georgia earlier, if you recall, and he took over Crimea, took over Donetsk and Lugansk, which frankly had been given to Ukraine as part of the Soviet Union from Russia. They were not Ukrainian territories at all. They were Russian territories, Russian-speaking, but given to Ukraine because Ukraine is, after all, part of the same country, the USSR. So, let's not live in fantasy land here. The fact of the matter is that all that Putin wanted was the Russian zones back, Donetsk, Lugansk, Crimea. He's got that now quite clearly. He incrementally needs a little more, and that's about it. It's not that he wants to take over the whole of Ukraine. Given the Russophobic mentality of the Ukrainians, that would mean a guerrilla war, like what the Russians fought in Afghanistan, most likely, which is going to be very destructive for Russia and for the whole of Europe. So I want to say very frankly that the advice given by Prime Minister Modi in April 2022 itself to Zelensky and Putin was, this is the era of peace, it's not the era of war, end the war. Putin was ready, Zelensky was not him, but his country and his people have paid a terrible price for it, as have the rest of the international community. We are suffering higher prices, we are suffering from all kinds of ridiculous sanctions that are frankly, trying to impose a certain decisions taken by a small group of countries in the West on the rest of the world. And it's causing so much of anti-Western feeling in the rest of the world that these sanctions are, in a way, being sought to be forced down other people's throats. So I think, as someone who has favored good relations with the West, who has favored a partnership with the West to promote and to strengthen democracy in the Indo-Pacific, I think the sooner this war is ended, the better. As for Putin, all he wanted was this. And now that he has got this, he has really not much incentive to prolong this war. And I hope Zelensky is sent out and a realistic Ukrainian takes his place. Thank you.
I wanted to move briefly away from Russia and the Ukrainian war and talk about Syria's warming relations with Ukraine in light of the Bashar al-Assad ousting. I was wondering what the implications of those warming relations are, Mashev Sadev.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I think you haven't got much time. Yesterday, the foreign minister of Ukraine was received by the new dispensation president in Damascus, and the two seem to have made conciliatory noises. The Ukrainians have offered some food consignments, some wheat, etc., to Syria, which are badly needed, and they are willing to help Syria with reconstruction, etc. Now, it remains to be seen if something can come out of it, because Syria's needs are enormous and Ukraine's capacity to do so is highly limited. At the same time, what Ukrainians would like to see is to put a strong roadblock on the way of return of Russia to Syria, including particularly on the naval and air base that they have near Latakia, and I suppose this is something that if Ukraine is able to stop from renewal being done, uh, this this would be a tangible achievement in putting paid to outreach of Russia to much of the Arab world as well as to Africa. And I think this would limit uh, Wagner Group and its other avatars uh, availability for making mischief in Africa and to Libya, in countries such as Libya where conditions are unsettled. But at the same time, I think if Syrian hierarchy is able to take on people in such as the anti-establishment people such as the Syrian defense forces, which is Kurdish bloc, it will preoccupy the Russian Muslims that have been active in against Ukraine, such as Chechens and others. This would keep them with HTS, and that HTS would then require them to work with it against the Kurds and others. So that would be net plus. You may also like to know that yesterday the new hierarchy of Syrian defense forces under the HTS-led government have been announced, and there are 9 foreign senior officers of colonels and brigadiers. Some of them are Chechens who have been given Syrian nationality and have been appointed at a very senior position in Syria's new army. So that may have something to do with Ukraine, Syria, Bonhomme of late. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now want to talk to Major General A.K. Sawatch again. I just wanted to ask, in recent months, Russia has said that they have deployed nuclear missiles globally. I wanted to tell you what you think about the future might hold in this regard.
You know, as far as nuclear weapons are concerned, these weapons are not weapons of war. They are weapons of deterrence. And as far as Russia is concerned, it has maximum nuclear warhead in any way. It has almost about 6,000. And the second country to follow it, US, which is almost having 5,500. And thereafter, third, fourth, fifth, they are all way behind, almost having 300 to 400 warhead. The point is, as far as Russia is concerned, it has made a hypersonic missile, which are more important. This oceanic Kanjar missile. Now, these are very, very dangerous, and they are the one which can also take a nuclear warhead. And the point is that in case they do not use nuclear warhead, still they are deadly because they are not able to be detected and they can cause a lot of damage. As far as Russia is concerned, they have already displayed once in Ukraine by using oceanic missile and also Kanjar. So I suppose this is more of a deterrence. I don't think Russia will ever use a nuclear weapon, and though it keeps on saying that it has basically a red line, if these red lines are crossed, it can use. But I still feel Putin will never use that weapon, and also Putin does not require as it is. He is winning a war, and his economy is not doing bad as everyone thought. You know, the point which the Europe was depending upon is that this, if this war prolongs, the Russia will not able to sustain. Its economy will break, and it will become more dependent on China. But unfortunately, fortunately, it didn't happen. As on today, the economy of Russia is doing quite well. The ruble is also, considering with dollar, is very robust. Also, its economy in terms of oil, gas, it still have a market, China, India and other countries. So I suppose that is the main thing. As far as Putin is concerned, he nothing to lose. He feels that he is on high ground. He has almost achieved all those military objectives which he stated for himself before they launch attack in February 2022. So I suppose nuclear weapons are not going to be used in this war in any way. And this, no red line as far as Russia is there, which has been crossed. So I suppose these are the weapons of deterrence, not of war. And we should also not think that in future someone use this weapon. And therefore the question comes is, country like Iran, in case if they possess a nuclear weapon, this will be a challenge. North Korea is a big challenge, which are the two countries which are there, including Pakistan. That these are the countries which are not that stable, and they can use these nuclear weapons when they are under tremendous pressure. But I don't think Russia will be a country which will ever use a nuclear weapon until unless it is so bad that the situation is beyond their control and it cannot be revived, and red lines are drawn to the extent that there is no other choice but to use a nuclear weapon. Otherwise, I don't feel that there is a threat of a nuclear weapon, especially in Russia-Ukraine war.
Thank you very much, Major General. And thank you to everyone for joining this. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. This has been a discussion on NewsX World. Thank you very much for joining us.